The first time I saw Ethan, I was 16, shivering on a Chicago street corner, my backpack heavy with everything I owned. A runaway with no plan. I was one bad decision away from disappearing into the city's underbelly. He was 21, a stranger with kind eyes, offered me a hot coffee and a place to crash, my savior, my anchor, my impossible dream. I'm Caleb, and this is the story of how I fell for the man who called me his little brother, never knowing how much more he meant to me. It's a story of quiet longing, of secrets I buried deep, and of a love I thought I'd never confess. But in a city as restless as Chicago, secrets have a way of breaking free. Chicago's winters bite harder than any small-town rejection I'd ever faced. I'd been on the streets for 3 days. My fingers numb, my stomach hollow, when Ethan found me outside a diner on Clark Street. I was trying to blend into the shadows, but he saw me, really saw me. His blonde hair caught the neon glow of the diner sign, and his smile was so warm it felt like a betrayal to the cold around us. "Hey, kid," he said, crouching to my level. "You look like you could use a coffee." His voice was smooth, steady, like he'd done this before, saved someone from themselves. I didn't trust him at first. Growing up in a small Illinois town where being gay meant whispers and fists, I learned to keep my guard up. But Ethan wasn't like the others. He didn't push, didn't pry. He just handed me a steaming cup and sat beside me on the curb, like we were old friends. When he asked if I had a place to stay, I shook my head, too tired to lie. That's when he offered his apartment. No strings attached. "I bought a couch," he said. "It's not much, but it's warm." I followed him, not because I believed in kindness, but because I had nowhere else to go. His apartment was small, a one-bedroom in Wicker Park with mismatched furniture and books stacked on every surface. He gave me a blanket, a pillow, and a promise. "You're safe here, Caleb." I didn't know then that those words would haunt me for years. A lifeline and a cage all at once. Ethan was a social worker, barely scraping by, but he had a heart bigger than the city itself. He worked with runaways, kids like me who'd been kicked out or had fled from homes that didn't want them. He told me I could stay as long as I needed, that he'd help me get back on my feet. "You're like my little brother now," he said, ruffling my hair. I laughed, but inside, something twisted. I didn't want to be his brother. Even then, I felt it, a pull toward him, dangerous and undeniable. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became my everything. He helped me enroll in a GED program, got me a part-time job at a coffee shop, and taught me how to navigate the L train. He'd come home from work with stories about the kids he helped, his eyes lighting up with purpose. I'd listen, hanging on every word, memorizing the way his lips curved when he laughed. I was 16, and I was falling for him. Hard, but I buried it deep. He was straight. I told myself. He was just being kind. I couldn't ruin this, the one good thing in my life. But there were moments that made me wonder. The way his hand lingered on my shoulder when he said goodnight. The time he caught me staring and didn't look away, his eyes searching mine for something I was too scared to name. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was projecting my own feelings onto him. I was just a kid he'd taken in, nothing more. One night, after I'd been staying with him for a month, we sat on his couch, watching some old sci-fi movie he loved. The room was dark, the glow of the TV casting shadows across his face. I was curled up under a blanket, my heart pounding because he was so close, our knees almost touching. "You okay, Caleb?" he asked, his voice soft. I nodded, unable to speak. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead, and I froze. His touch was gentle, but it burned through me, setting my skin alight. "You don't have to carry it all alone," he said. "Whatever you're running from, you can tell me." I wanted to tell him everything about the small-town bullies who'd made my life hell, about my parents who'd turned their backs when I came out, about the way I felt when he looked at me. But I didn't. I just smiled and said, "I'm good, Ethan. Thanks to you." He nodded, satisfied, and turned back to the movie. I stared at the screen, my chest tight with all the words I couldn't say. That night, lying on the couch, I made a promise to myself. I'd keep my feelings hidden. Ethan had given me a home, a family, a second chance. I wouldn't repay him by making things complicated. But promises are fragile things, and Chicago has a way of breaking them. 2 years passed, and I turned 18. Ethan threw me a small party in his apartment. Just the two of us and a couple of his friends from work. There was pizza, a lopsided cake he'd baked himself, and a playlist of 90s hits he swore were classics. I laughed when he danced like an idiot to Wonderwall, but my heart ached watching him. He was 23 now, still the same Ethan, kind, selfless, impossibly beautiful, but there was a new weight to him, like the city was starting to wear him down. I'd settled into life in Chicago. I had my GED, a steady job at the coffee shop, and a tiny savings account Ethan insisted I open. He'd moved me from the couch to a real bed in a corner of his living room, sectioned off with a curtain for privacy. It wasn't much, but it was home. Ethan was home. And that was the problem. My feelings for him hadn't faded. They'd grown, twisting into something I could barely control. Every smile, every casual touch, every late-night conversation fed the fire inside me. I'd catch myself staring at him when he wasn't looking, memorizing the way his blonde hair fell across his forehead, the way his laugh filled the room. I hated myself for it. He'd given me everything, and here I was, wanting more, wanting something he could never give. I started noticing things about Ethan, too. He never talked about dating, never brought anyone home. His friends teased him about being married to his work, but I wondered if there was more to it. Once, I overheard him on the phone, his voice low and strained, talking about someone he'd let go a long time ago. I didn't ask questions, but the curiosity gnawed at me. Who was he? What had happened? And why did it feel like he was hiding something? 2. One evening, we were walking through Millennium Park after grabbing dinner at a food truck. The city was alive with summer energy, tourists snapping photos of the bean, street musicians filling the air with sound. Ethan was quieter than usual, his hands stuffed in his pockets. I nudged him, tried to lighten the mood. "What's up, man? You look like you're carrying the world." He glanced at me, his blue eyes catching the glow of the park's lights. "Just thinking about the past," he said, his voice soft. "You ever wonder if you made the right choices?" I swallowed hard, my own secrets pressing against my chest. "All the time," I admitted. "But then I remember I'm here, with you, and it feels right." He stopped walking, turning to face me. For a moment, I thought he might say something that would change everything. But he just smiled, a little sad, and said, You're a good kid. Caleb, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to scream that I wasn't a kid anymore, that I was 18, that I loved him in a way that had nothing to do with brotherhood. But I didn't. I just nodded and kept walking, the weight of my silence heavier than ever. That night, back at the apartment, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our walk. I was tired of hiding, tired of pretending I didn't feel what I felt. But the thought of telling him terrified me. What if he didn't understand? What if he sent me away? I couldn't lose him, not when he was the only family I had. The next day, Ethan came home with news. He'd been offered a promotion at work, but it meant longer hours, more responsibility. It's a chance to do more, he said, his eyes bright with purpose. To help more kids like you. I smiled, proud of him, but my heart sank. More hours meant less time with him. Less time to pretend I could keep this up forever. That's amazing. Ethan, I said, forcing enthusiasm. You're going to change lives. He looked at me, his expression softening. I hope so. But I'm not going anywhere. Caleb, you're still stuck with me. I laughed. But inside, I was breaking. Stuck with him was exactly what I wanted, and exactly what I couldn't have. By the time I was 19, I'd started community college, studying graphic design. Ethan had pushed me to apply, saying I had a knack for art. He'd even bought me a second-hand tablet to practice on, a gift that made me cry when he wasn't looking. His belief in me was everything, but it also made my secret harder to bear. How could I love someone so much and not tell them? How could I keep lying to the person who'd given me a future? Ethan's new job kept him busier, but we still had our moments, late-night talks over takeout, walks along Lake Michigan, quiet evenings watching movies. Those were the times I lived for, when it was just us, and I could pretend, for a moment, that he felt what I felt. But there were other moments, too, moments that cracked my carefully built walls. One night, I came home from class to find Ethan on the couch, a beer in his hand, staring at an old photo. It was him and another guy, maybe his age, arms around each other, laughing. I'd never seen the picture before, and something about it twisted my gut. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Ethan's face tightened, just for a second, before he smiled. "Old friend," he said, slipping the photo into a drawer. "Haven't seen him in years." I didn't push, but the questions burned. Was this the person he'd been talking about on the phone? Why'd he look so sad? I wanted to know everything, but I was too afraid to ask. Instead, I changed the subject, asking about his day. He relaxed, but the photo stayed with me, a ghost I couldn't shake. A few weeks later, things got complicated. I'd started hanging out with a guy from my art class, Marcus, who was openly gay and didn't hide it. He was funny, confident, and maybe a little too flirty. One day, he invited me to a queer art showcase downtown, and I went, thinking it'd be good to connect with people like me. The event was vibrant, full of color and energy, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere other than Ethan's apartment. Marcus and I talked for hours, and when he leaned in to kiss me at the end of the night, I let him. It was quick, soft, nothing serious, but felt wrong, like a betrayal. When I got home, Ethan was waiting up, his jaw tight. "You're out late," he said, his tone sharper than usual. "Just an art thing," I said, avoiding his eyes. I could still feel Marcus's lips on mine, and guilt clawed at me, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Ethan didn't say anything else, but the air between us was heavy, like I'd crossed a line I didn't know existed. The next day, he was distant, leaving for work early and coming home late. I told myself it was his job, but deep down, I wondered if he'd sensed something. Did he know about Marcus? Did he care? The thought that he might be jealous sent a dangerous spark of hope through me. But I stamped it out. Ethan wasn't like that. He couldn't be. Still, the tension grew. I started spending more time with Marcus, not because I wanted him, but because I needed a distraction. Every moment with Ethan was a reminder of what I couldn't have. And Marcus was easy, safe. But the more I pulled away, the more Ethan seemed to notice. He'd ask where I was going, who I was with, his questions laced with something I couldn't name. It was driving me crazy, this dance of half-truths and hidden feelings. One night, it all came to a head. I'd been out with Marcus again, and when I got home, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table, his eyes dark. "We need to talk," he said. My heart stopped. "About what?" He leaned forward, his voice low. "You're different lately, Caleb. Distant. If something's going on, you need to tell me." I wanted to laugh, to cry, to scream that the only thing going on was that I was in love with him and it was killing me. But I didn't. I just shook my head and said, "I'm fine. Ethan. Just figuring stuff out." He didn't look convinced, but he let it go. As I walked to my corner of the room, I felt his eyes on me, heavy with something unspoken. I was losing my grip, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up. I was 20 when everything started to unravel. Ethan's promotion had him working late most nights, and I was juggling college and a new job at a design studio. Our time together dwindled, but the moments we did share were charged with something new, tension, unspoken questions, a current I couldn't ignore. I was tired of hiding, tired of pretending I could live like this forever. Marcus had become a regular part of my life, and while I liked him, I didn't love him. He was a friend, a distraction, nothing more. But Ethan didn't see it that way. One evening, I brought Marcus to the apartment to work on a project together. Ethan was home, and the moment he saw Marcus, his face changed, closed off, unreadable. He was polite, shaking Marcus's hand, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. After Marcus left, Ethan cornered me in the kitchen. "So, what's the deal with him?" he asked, his tone casual but sharp. "He's just a friend," I said, my heart racing. "We're working on a project." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Doesn't seem like just a friend." I froze, caught off guard. Was he jealous? The thought sent a thrill through me, but it was quickly drowned by fear. "What's that supposed to mean?" I shot back. "Defensive." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Nothing, Caleb. Just be careful. Okay, I don't want you getting hurt." I wanted to scream that the only person hurting me was him, with his kindness, his protectiveness, his everything. But I just nodded and walked away, my chest tight with frustration. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living in his shadow. I needed to move out, to put distance between us before I lost myself completely. The next week, I started looking for a place of my own. It wasn't easy. Chicago was expensive, and my savings were meager, but I found a tiny studio in Uptown I could afford. When I told Ethan, his face fell. "You're leaving?" he asked, his voice quiet. "I think it's time," I said, avoiding his eyes. "You've done so much for me. I need to stand on my own." He didn't argue, but the hurt in his eyes cut deeper than I expected. The day I moved out, he helped me carry my boxes, his silence louder than any words. As we stood in my empty new apartment, he hugged me, his arms tight around me. "You'll always have a home with me, Caleb," he said. I nodded, unable to speak, and watched him walk away, taking a piece of my heart with him. Living alone was harder than I thought. The studio was cold, lonely, a far cry from Ethan's warm, cluttered apartment. I threw myself into work and school, trying to fill the void, but I missed him every day. We still saw each other, coffee here, a movie there, but it wasn't the same. The distance only made my feelings sharper, more desperate. One night, Marcus invited me to a club in Boys Town, Chicago's vibrant gay neighborhood. I went, hoping to drown my thoughts in music and lights. The club was packed, the air thick with sweat and laughter. Marcus was his usual charming self, pulling me onto the dance floor, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong. Then I saw him, Ethan, standing by the bar, his eyes locked on me. My heart stopped. He wasn't supposed to be here. He never went to clubs, especially not ones like this. I broke away from Marcus and walked over, my pulse pounding. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. I could ask you the same thing. We stared at each other, the music fading into the background. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes, something raw, vulnerable, like he was as lost as I was. "Caleb," he started, but before he could finish, Marcus appeared, slinging an arm around my shoulders. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked, oblivious to the tension. Ethan's jaw tightened, and he nodded. "Yeah." I was just leaving. He turned and walked out, leaving me standing there, my heart in pieces. I didn't go after him. I couldn't. But that night, alone in my studio, I realized I couldn't keep running from this. I had to tell him the truth, even if it destroyed everything. I spent the next week replaying that night in the club, Ethan's eyes burning into mine. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that the walls we'd both built were starting to crack. I knew I had to talk to him, to lay everything bare, no matter the cost. I was 21 now, no longer the scared kid he'd taken in. If I didn't tell him how I felt, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. I texted him, asking to meet at Millennium Park, our old haunt. It was early autumn, the leaves turning gold, the air crisp. When I arrived, Ethan was already there, sitting on a bench, his hands clasped between his knees. He looked tired, older than his 26 years, but still so beautiful it hurt to look at him. "Hey," I said, sitting beside him. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. "Hey," he replied, his voice soft. "You okay?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "No, Ethan. I'm not okay. I haven't been for a long time." He turned to me, his brow furrowing. "What's going on?" "Caleb, talk to me." I looked out at the skyline, the city that had both saved me and broken me. "I've been lying to you," I said, my voice shaking. "Not about everything, but about the most important thing. I love you, Ethan. Not like a brother, not like a friend. I'm in love with you, and I have been since the day we met. The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. Ethan's face went still, his eyes wide. For a moment, I thought he might bolt, but he didn't. He just sat there, staring at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. Caleb, he started, his voice hoarse. I didn't know. I know, I said, my throat tight. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want to ruin what we had. But I can't keep pretending. It's killing me. He looked away, his jaw working. You're not ruining anything, he said finally. But this is complicated. My heart sank. Because you don't feel the same way. He shook his head, his eyes meeting mine. It's not that simple. There's stuff you don't know. Caleb. Stuff I haven't told anyone. I leaned closer, desperate. Then tell me. Please. He hesitated, then sighed, running a hand through his hair. There was someone, a long time ago. His name was Ryan. We were together in college, before I moved to Chicago. I loved him, more than I thought I could love anyone. But he left. Said I was too focused on saving the world, that I didn't have room for him. It broke me. Caleb. I swore I'd never let myself feel that way again. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Ethan was gay. All this time, I thought he was straight, that my feelings were impossible. But now everything was different. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Because I didn't want you to look at me differently, he said. You were this kid who needed me, and I needed to be strong for you. I didn't want you to know how messed up I was. You're not messed up, I said fiercely. You're the best person I know. He smiled, but it was sad. I don't know what to do with this. Caleb, you're important to me more than you know. But I'm scared. I don't want to hurt you. I reached out, my hand brushing his. You won't, I said. Just don't shut me out. He didn't pull away, but he didn't say anything either. We sat there in silence, the city humming around us. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could love me back. The weeks after my confession were a blur of hope and uncertainty. Ethan didn't push me away, but he didn't pull me closer either. We saw each other less, both of us cautious, like we were walking on glass. But every time we talked, there was something new in his eyes, something that made my heart ache with possibility. I threw myself into my art, pouring my feelings into designs that were raw, vibrant, alive. My professors noticed, and one even submitted my work to a local gallery. Well, I got the call that they wanted to feature me in a showcase. I couldn't believe it. The first person I wanted to tell was Ethan. I invited him to the gallery opening, nervous but determined. He showed up in a tailored gray jacket, his blonde hair catching the light. And for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I'm proud of you, Caleb, he said, his voice warm. You're doing big things. The night was a success. My piece is selling faster than I expected. But the real moment came afterward, when Ethan and I walked through the quiet streets of the Loop, the city glowing around us. You've come a long way, he said, his hands in his pockets. I always knew you would. I stopped walking, turning to face him. I wouldn't be here without you. Ethan, you saved me. He shook his head. You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to start. I took a step closer, my heart pounding. You gave me more than that. You gave me a home, a family. You gave me you. His eyes softened, and for the first time, he didn't look away. Caleb, he said, his voice low. I've been scared to let myself feel this. But I do. I feel it. Before I could process his words, he closed the distance between us, his lips brushing mine. It was soft, tentative, but set my world on fire. I kissed him back, my hands finding his, and for a moment, it was just us, no secrets, no fear, just the truth. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine, his breath warm against my skin. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, but I want to try. With you, it wasn't perfect. There were still hurdles, his past, my insecurities, the years we'd spent hiding from each other. But as we stood there, the city alive around us, I knew we'd figure it out. Love wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Years later, I look back on that moment as the start of everything. Ethan and I built a life together, not as brothers, but as partners, equals, lovers. Chicago had taken me in when I had nothing, and in its chaos, I'd found him. The boy who'd run from everything had finally found a home, not in a city, but in a person. And that, I think, is the greatest victory of all.